Lingering questions over a massive explosion that rocks the Country Club Plaza. Plus, why the bus service may be losing millions to help pay for Kansas City's new streetcar line. And if a third grader can't read, should they be stopped from going to fourth grade? Kansas Governor Sam Brownback's tough love plan to improve the education system. Welcome everyone. What a week it has been. Shoveling their driveways and enduring traffic snarls to be with you, even willing to trash their own vehicles this half hour. Bill Grady from KMBZ Radio, working on perhaps just 2 or 3 hours of sleep all week, having been through comprehensive coverage of the JJ's restaurant explosion and then through the massive snowstorm. Also from KMBZ, keeping you informed minute by minute on those two huge events this week. Dana Wright, weekday afternoons on News Radio 98.1 FM, Dana and Parks program. KCPT's special correspondent Sam Zeff is with us, and Kansas City Star reporter, blogger and columnist Dave Helling. You know, it was a week in Kansas City that saw KCI Airport shut down, most businesses and schools closed as our area was pounded by a major snowstorm. But it was a weather event longtime residents have become accustomed to here in the metro. More shocking this week were events on the Country Club Plaza, which left 1 dead and 16 hurt as a huge natural gas explosion destroys a popular restaurant before the busy evening rush. The injuries and loss of life could have been so much greater, but there are so many lingering questions this week. Chief among them, should the plaza have been evacuated before the blast at the JJ's restaurant, when numerous people were reporting strong gas smells that left them feeling sick to the stomach long before the explosion? Kansas City Mayor Sly James hotly deflected those questions this week, saying he refused to play the blame game on that issue and challenged the reporting.
People are reporting a lot of different things, but we have absolutely no phone calls that indicate they reported them to us, the fire department, or the MGE. And if people were reporting smells of gas, it makes sense that they report them to somebody who can do something about it. So one of the things that we've tried to do up to this point is to point out that we're trying to deal in facts, whereas a lot of what's being reported is nothing more than rumor and innuendo. Case in point, the article that was written in the paper that says that the doctor reported to MGE at 1 o'clock that there was gas. When you listen to his statement in the video, he never said that.
Authorities can only respond to what they're told about, says the mayor. The mayor says no one called in a complaint. No one called 911 or the city, Dana Wright.
Everyone is in CYA mode right now. That is what the mayor's comments reflected right there. The fact of the matter is this: people in the know, people who know what to do when the area smells of gas, and I'm talking about the MGE employees, were there at least an hour before JJ's blew to smithereens. Their own website says when you smell gas, evacuate. And multiple witnesses, credible, educated local attorneys, are saying there was no sense of urgency inside that restaurant. They were told, finish your meal, tab out, get out when you can. The wait staff is quoted as saying from hospital beds, there was no sense of urgency here. Someone screwed up, and there is a horrific, really horrific outcome to this mistake. And I know the mayor's saying, let's not blame, it's too early to blame. But someone needs to be blamed because those people should have been evacuated.
You were on the scene a lot this week, Bill Grady, on the plaza, but the mayor is saying it's just one thing for people to complain that they smelled gas, but it's another thing to actually complain to somebody who can actually do something about it. There's been a lot of misreporting here.
Well, I think the jury is still out on it because everyone is covering themselves to some extent. This always happens, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're trying to get all the facts assembled. Now, oddly enough, one of the gentlemen that I talked with owns a travel agency right down the street. His windows were blown out. He was in JJ's maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the explosion occurred, smelled gas and called our radio station, as opposed to, now he didn't say specifically he didn't call first responders, but that seems to be the general theme. Mr. Hack, who is a COO of MGE, says that the gas was at safe levels, and that it takes a while for it to migrate into a building before you can determine that it is dangerous. So that's the company's take on it, but this is far, far from over.
Dave Helling.
Well, I think there has been some criticism of the mayor's tone at his news conference, suggesting that somehow reporters were trying to blame people, when I think the journalistic endeavor is to try and find who's responsible, Nick, so that if it happens again tomorrow, we know who is responsible for making this call. Now, it is very clear. I'm working on this story today, actually. The city has an evacuation plan, a published evacuation plan that lays out different scenarios, and it's very clear from looking at that document that the call to evacuate an area lies with what's called the incident commander, typically either a fire department person or a police officer. He or she makes the call at the scene of an incident, and then that evacuation follows. What the fire department is telling me today is they don't consider this explosion an incident until the actual explosion takes place. Well, that is a gaping hole in your evacuation plan. If you don't have some chain of authority from the time the first call comes in until the explosion, something needs to be fixed, and I think that's what's going to be examined.
In the press conference, though, the mayor said that they deferred to the experts on the field, which were the Missouri Gas Energy
and they may well have done that,
company.
Nick, but the plan does not anticipate that at all. It says simply the fire department or the police department makes that call. If that's wrong, it needs to be changed.
Let's hear from Sam and Dana.
Generally speaking, at a gas leak, it is the local utility that commands the scene. Now, I think Dave is right that there seems to be some disparity in that, but almost everywhere you go, when there's a gas leak, they defer to the utility because they know where the shutoff valves are, they have the equipment to test the gas. And the question that I had in turning off the gas is, I don't know how old those gas lines are, but there are probably gas lines down there that are 80, 90 years old, and having a map to know where the valve is and how to turn it off may eventually turn out to be a problem.
But you don't think MGE didn't have that? And I'm just going to say this, according to the Kansas City Star, and I thought you guys did a great job the next day, they have a national gas expert quoted in that article as saying it would have taken 3 minutes to shut the gas off a little bit further down the street. Why not err on the side of caution, go a block down and shut it off? And those are the questions, not blame, that need to be answered. Why not shut it off? It's too late now. A woman's dead.
Well, I mean, my argument is I think that the city will undertake some endeavor to understand what the chain of command is when in an incident like this, because someone needs to take charge. Clearly, that didn't happen in this case, at least until the explosion. Let me also add one other thing, Nick. We have to pay attention to what happened after the explosion as well. People were evacuated. Who made that call? Who went door to door? Who has the authority to tell someone in a nearby apartment it's time to leave? I talked to people down there who said no police officer came by, no firefighter. How were they told that they needed to leave, and what was the perimeter? Those things, you learn lessons from incidents like this, and I think the city of Kansas City definitely
But reading the letter section of your very own newspaper, many people have been very impressed by how the mayor handled this. Regular press briefings with the head of Missouri Gas Energy, with the fire chief, being very solid, very definitive, coming out, again, with regular briefings. There was no vacuum of information. He came out very strong and has been there throughout the whole deal. Doesn't he deserve credit here?
I think he put a pretty good face on what was really a tragic situation, but as Davis said, there are so many things here that are yet to be determined. Heartland Midwest, a subcontractor, actually made the initial call of the gas smell. Now, what I did find interesting is that as soon as I got to the scene, which was just a few minutes after the explosion, there were still people walking around with sniffers above, north of where the explosion occurred to determine if there were other gas leaks. And so I think the question becomes, where were they prior to the incident?
I also want to say really quick, Nick, I think this is a fascinating case study about groupthink, and I think people didn't go with their gut, and we saw this, and I'm not comparing this to 9/11, but we saw this on 9/11, where people are kind of standing around and not doing anything, and people in the restaurant said, we kind of thought if this was a dangerous situation, they'd be telling us to leave, and he wasn't leaving, and she wasn't leaving, so I didn't leave. And I think there is an important lesson to be learned here, that if you smell gas or you really feel like something's not right, You are in charge of your personal safety, and no one is going to take care of you better than you.
I don't disagree with that. And, you know, obviously going forward, I think all of Kansas City will feel that way. But you have plans in place for a reason, and you have lines of authority for a reason. Nick, it is mandatory evacuations are not permitted under Kansas City law. You can't force someone to leave. Maybe we need to take a look at that. There's no law that allows the fire department or police to make you leave your home. So what I'm suggesting is when the mayor is concerned about what reporters are asking, it's easy in the days after an event to sort of say, oh, you're trying to blame somebody. What all of Kansas City wants is some understanding of how to address this problem, so if it happens again, we don't get the tragic outcome that we did.
But it's going back to Dana's point from the very beginning, going back to what it says on the Missouri Gas Energy website. If you smell natural gas, evacuate the premises or area immediately.
It's on their own website.
That should be all of our advice after this story. There are lots of other things going on in Kansas City this week. Backers of the Kansas City bus service are angry this week. They say when bus ridership is increasing, routes are being cut, and despite promises from City Hall of more money, they're being asked to take a financial hit to help support the new 2-mile downtown streetcar line. The city manager's new budget proposes siphoning $2 million from the bus budget to fund streetcar-related expenses. Now, why and how should this be, given that there is a pot of money already assigned for streetcars? Didn't we just have an election, Bill Grady? There was a streetcar sales tax and a property tax hike to pay for streetcars. So why do we need to take bus money to help pay for streetcars as well?
Because a lot of people are very opposed to the downtown streetcars, and I think it appears, at least prima facie, this may well be a fallback plan. Now, I did talk to some city officials. They say they have vetted this through a judge, and everything that they're doing is completely legal, and they feel on very firm footing that they're going to be able to get this through without any difficulty.
Okay, but you can see the infuriation here, though, from the folks with the bus service, though, Dave Helling.
Well, and not only that, but the governance of the streetcar is different from the ATA, and so there's going to be some friction there. I think that going forward, Nick, we are going to see more examples of a need to transfer money around as the streetcar is developed, because I don't think you can talk to anyone who thinks that the firm cost estimate is going to stay firm over time, particularly as Sam suggests, once they start digging in the street and finding out where the utilities are and other things that need to be addressed. So the idea of taking money from the mobile bus service may not be a one-time thing.
Now, you were on this program just a few weeks ago where we were talking also about a lawsuit involving the streetcar line, and that was we had downtown business owners filing a suit to try and block that from taking place. Whatever happened to that lawsuit?
Well, it's still going forward. In fact, this week, attorneys for the plaintiffs, the business owners who are suing, opposed a motion entered by the city to expedite this hearing. The city, right after the suit was filed, said, hey, let's speed this up. We want to build the streetcar as quickly as possible. The plaintiffs are saying, no, we need to take a strong look at that. So we're in the sort of exchange of motions and setting the schedule stage. That lawsuit is still very much alive.
It's attracting national attention this week. A Missouri lawmaker has proposed a bill that would send his fellow lawmakers to prison if they propose more gun control legislation. House Bill 633, proposed by Mike Lira, a St. Louis County Republican, would make it a felony, punishable with up to 4 years in prison, for anyone who proposes a piece of legislation that further restricts the rights of an individual to bear arms, as set forth under the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Can a lawmaker actually do this?
Well, he can. It's just that it's not going to go anywhere, because we had a situation last week where Representative Rory Ellinger from suburban St. Louis introduced a measure with 4 co-sponsors, and the assault weapons definition got so far expanded that he finally said, okay, I wasn't serious about it, I just wanted to get a dialogue started. I suspect that's the case here as well.
But this is all born out of a huge frustration, Sam Zeff, with all of these new gun control measures that are going not just in all across the country as a result of the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Yeah, I think the legislature in both Kansas and Missouri is sort of grasping at straws, trying to show their own base that they're not going to take it, they're not going to stand for any new federal legislation that would further restrict any sort of gun ownership. And to answer your question, can he file such a bill? Well, yeah, but this comes with some cost. I mean, legislative services write it. It has to be printed. There's staff time. It's just a waste of time and money.
Well, and there's one other cost, and that is lawmakers may not take too kindly to legislation like this. His colleagues might be a little more upset, even those who support gun legislation. So my guess is, maybe he would hope this would die down fairly quickly.
Did it come up on your radio show this week with your listeners?
From a practical standpoint, my colleague Scott Parks said, Missouri is now ground zero as a perfect example of why we cannot have an intelligent debate about gun violence in America. We just can't. We have one lawmaker, a Democrat, saying, well, let's just round up and confiscate guns. Well, that's not going to happen. And then we have this dingbat saying what he's saying. And Scott said it just goes to show you no one is willing to come to the table with a real, serious, intelligent debate about moving forward with real solutions. Yay, Missouri.
Yes. And is anything happening with regards to guns in either state as a result of the Sandy Hook Elementary School?
Nothing substantial. And the interesting thing is that if you talk to the experts, a lot will tell you that one of the big problems is the reporting system, people that have mental problems. Then you get into the HIPAA laws, and there out of the entire U.S., there are only about 12 states that regularly report.
We move on now to the Kansas side. Reading has always been important in schools, but in Kansas, they're about to get a lot tougher on kids who struggle to comprehend the written word. If Governor Sam Brownback gets his way, they won't get to graduate beyond 3rd grade until they can demonstrate reading proficiency.
Passing children up the grade ladder when we know they can't read is irresponsible and it's cruel. We can and we must do better by our children.
But is flunking, retaining, or holding them back the answer? KCPT special correspondent Sam Zeff has been digging into that issue this week.
We start this report with something you read, I read, and almost every 3rd grader in America will read. E.B. White's Charlotte's Web, the children's classic about friendship and trust. To judge reading proficiency, thousands of 3rd graders will be tested on this book, and many will be asked this question about a line on page 41. What do you think Wilbur means when he says, what a gamble friendship is? And if a plan from Governor Brownback becomes law, a lot may be riding on the answer.
Can I just say that it feels a little scary to know that if you can't master, and I don't mean this to sound flip, but if you can't master Charlotte's Web in 3rd grade, that has a domino effect for the rest of your life. That feels a little scary to me.
It is scary. It is scary. But that speaks to the need to think very purposefully and systematic and systemically about what happens in those early years.
As educators like to say, before 3rd grade, children learn to read. After 3rd grade, they read to learn.
And we do know that the 3rd grade reading level is an indicator of student success on the area of high school graduation, their experiences at the post-secondary level in college and careers.
So Governor Brownback proposes to hold back, with a few exceptions, any 3rd grader who can't pass the state reading assessment test.
No one wants to hold students back. I don't, and I don't believe the governor does, but if that's what would encourage, motivate the student to pay attention and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, then we need to do something.
But relying on that one test to determine whether a 3rd grader gets promoted has many Kansas educators very worried.
And I think for any highly effective teacher, they will tell you that one measure cannot do that. It's lots of multiple pieces of data that will tell you what a child needs in order to increase their reading achievement. So we're doing this to third grade students who may not have had a good day for whatever reason, and now we're really having great impact on his life, his or her life. So I'm not sure people in Topeka are thinking about that.
Research shows that students held in third grade may show some short-term improvement, but have a higher chance of dropping out of high school. So while everyone agrees we have to address third grade reading problems, which are especially acute in poor families, there is a definite split in how we solve it. While the governor wants to spend $6 million next year on intensive reading programs for elementary students, most others want to invest more into preschools.
90% of a child's brain architecture is solidified by 5 years old.
Lori Alvarado is executive director of Kansas Head Start, the largest preschool provider in the state.
So if 90% of the architecture in the brain is set by 5 years old, it seems fairly likely that spending time and effort and quality time and effort in those first 5 years would give us better results with learning and reading proficiency later on.
How critical is early childhood development to the goal of having at grade level reading by third grade?
Extremely important, extremely important.
And says KCK Assistant Superintendent Marcy Clay, high-quality preschool is critical in her district, where 35% of children live in poverty, almost twice the state average. But Governor Brownback and State House Republicans have very different ideas. They want to create new reading programs aimed at kids who are already in grade school.
And here's the twist. In the Brownback reading plan, the governor wants to cut schools entirely out of the mix.
The governor's bill would distribute that $6 million by giving grants to nonprofit organizations who would design and run the programs. The bill had its first hearing this week in the Senate Education Committee. Its chairman is Senator Steve Abrams from our Kansas City.
So it's more important to you to get money into these other supplementary programs than giving this money to school districts to hire additional reading specialists or that sort of thing.
It's more important for me that the students be able to get the ability to have the ability to read, and this is one mechanism for that to occur.
The money will be handed out by something called the Children's Cabinet. It was formed in 1999 to help figure out how to spend tobacco settlement money in Kansas.
We're going to dole it out to outside groups who I'm not too sure really have the experience in terms of providing services so that kids can read better.
Democratic Senator Anthony Hensley from Topeka, the minority leader in the Senate, charges the Brownback reading plan is simply a way to start privatizing education.
Yeah, the governor now controls the Children's Cabinet. He does not control the Department of Education, so he would much prefer to have control over this $6 million so he can basically give this to, I would suspect, faith-based organizations.
And that report by Sam Zepp. What does Governor Brownback say then to this charge that this would go and funnel the money to faith-based groups, Sam?
Very interesting response from his press secretary. I asked her, well, will this go to faith-based education? Her response was, we don't know of any eligible organization that could get this money. Interesting response about that is that there are no eligibility requirements at this point. Those will all be written after the legislation passes by the Children's Cabinet. So the money can really go to anybody, any 501c3 who can put together a program that the Children's Cabinet determines to be viable.
I wanted to open this up for the conversation, but let me just ask you this, just to clarify, you could be fabulous, off the charts as a student in science and math,
right.
But if you failed that test in reading, you would be held back.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Now, the reality is, of course, you're probably not off the charts in science and math if you can't read. However, there's going to be children out there who are perfectly capable at science and math, who have some reading problems, who would be held back and have to repeat the whole curriculum.
Dana, there must be, people get very frustrated, though, with schools that we are too easy on folks. And so, you know, won't a lot of people be very happy, though, that the governor is getting tough?
But putting all of those eggs in one basket and testing these poor kids on this day, you better do good on this day or else. Look at No Child Left Behind. It was a colossal failure. And this is one of those times where I think putting the solution up here at this level is a bad idea. And you just have to look at No Child Left Behind. Let the teachers sort this out. And I've got some expertise in this arena. I have a third grader who has a reading specialist. Imagine that, in the school, who knows how to help my child. Put this at the local level.
But we hear all the time of students being able to go through the system and still not being able to master the basics, and yet we let them slide through.
I say giving $6 million to outside organizations we haven't even identified yet is not the way to get these kids reading.
But I do think that, Nick, the point you're making is probably valid, and that is that the goal here is a great one. You've got to teach kids to be fundamentally sound in reading before really you teach almost anything else. The question then is the mechanism for doing that and how to ascertain whether that's the case. If you spend a lot of money with outside groups, that theoretically could backfire a little bit, largely because they won't be as accountable to the state government as public schools would be. That could be a problem going forward.
And what are the prospects of this then passing the legislature? After all, it's just the governor's idea, Sam.
Well, it's the governor's idea and completely backed by Republican leaders. So this thing is going to come out of the legislature pretty soon. But then the real interesting part comes when it goes to the Children's Cabinet and they have to write these rules and regulations.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. Dana Wright, heard 2 to 6 weekday afternoons on KMBC's Dana and Parks, and every day in the Kansas City Star, Dave Helling, KCPT's special correspondent Sam Zeff, and KMBC General Assignment Reporter Bill Grady. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.